Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has signed a new law against sexual harassment in both public and online spaces. The new law criminalizes acts like catcalling, groping, and making homophobic or sexist comments. Now, those caught could face hefty fines or up to 6 months in jail. The consequences of physical, mental, and sexual abuse often last a lifetime. Violence against women can be carried out by family members, intimate partners, or members of their community. The acts can range from rape and domestic battering to sexual harassment, child abuse, and aggravated assault. In South and Southeast Asia, the percentage of women abused by intimate partners is high, with 42% in South Asia and 28% in Southeast Asia. Now, some countries like India, Nepal, and Thailand have implemented national action plans to prevent sexual violence. And now to further discuss this, we are joined live by Charisse Jordan in Manila. She is a project coordinator for UN Women in the Philippines. It's great to have you with us on our program. So let's talk about the Philippines' new sexual harassment law. Just how do you think it will fare in the country?
Yes, we are very happy that the President signed now the Safe Spaces Act. It is defined as a gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online spaces, workplace, education, and training institutions. And as you mentioned, it provides remedies for women who experience sexual harassment in all spaces, including public spaces. And we welcome the adoption of this new law because prior to this law, sexual harassment in public spaces was not legally recognized as a crime in the Philippines, and also there are gaps in the existing or in the previous sexual harassment law. And for this law, we see that there is a very comprehensive framework of implementation. It involves from the police officers to requiring traffic enforcers to be what we call ASHI, or the anti-sexual harassment enforcers. It requires local governments to also enact local policies or ordinances to implement the national law. And it will also have a monitoring element because there will be audit in all government agencies who will be implementing the new law. Also, not only in terms of prosecution, we also welcome the measure to provide education for offenders. The law also requires, especially first-time offenders, to undergo a gender sensitivity training, which will be provided by the Philippine Commission of Women in collaboration with the Philippine National Police and the local government units. We see this as also a trailblazing initiative because, of course, we want to see behavior change. We see the law as sending a strong message that the sexual harassment in all spaces and at any time or in any form will not be tolerated, and it's always a serious issue. So we see that not only prosecution, but in terms of behavior change, education, and in joining all the stakeholders, all members of the society to take part, to be active bystanders as part of the solution to end sexual harassment and sexual violence in all forms.
Well, as you mentioned, Ms. Jordan, the law is indeed sending a very strong message, and initiatives are already in place to educate these offenders. But to what extent do you think that this new law can help improve the overall situation for women in Southeast Asia?
Yes. Well, Philippines has been seen as the leading country in the Asia Pacific, if not worldwide. It has had good ranking in terms of gender equality index. And this measure puts the Philippines again in the map, especially in Southeast Asia. It can be an inspiration in other countries for the government to also be inspired to enforce and to develop their respective policy on sexual harassment in public spaces and at all spaces and all forms of gender-based violence. For Southeast Asia, we see that through this new law, the Safe Spaces Act, we can promote safer cities and safer communities for women, but also we want to work with all members of the society, women and girls, men and boys alike, to also be part of, again, the solution to end sexual harassment and sexual violence in public spaces and all spaces. So for the Philippines, we see this as it could be a role model for its ASEAN neighbors, and it can also provide that framework where we can include prosecution of sexual harassment not only by filing complaint. You don't have to go to the court to file a complaint, because when caught in the act, the traffic enforcers can immediately apprehend and report perpetrators of sexual harassment in public spaces. And it also includes specifically sexual harassment that happens in public utility vehicles or in transportation. So it's very comprehensive, and again, it recognizes all spaces where sexual harassment can take place, in public spaces, parks, including in online spaces. And it also establishes that sexual harassment can be also committed by by colleagues or peer-to-peer relations, because previously the sexual harassment law was only for those with moral ascendancy, but right now the law that we have, this newly passed law, is comprehensive. It applies to all spaces, and it also applies to women and girls, and it enjoins the whole of the community to work together, even men and boys as our allies.
Yeah, right. So let's hope that this new law will certainly help improve the overall situation for women and to better protect their rights. Thank you so much, Ms. Charisse Jordan, for your insight on this. Appreciate it.